Good evening and welcome to the Peoria City Council Special Study Session for Wednesday, April 15th, 2015. Please pause for a moment of silence. Vice Mayor Edwards will lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor Carlett. Mayor Carlett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Patena.
Here.
Councilmember Finn.
Here.
Councilmember Hunt. Here. Councilmember Leone.
Here.
Thank you. Tonight we will continue our discussion of the fiscal year 2016 budget. Mr. Swenson.
Thank you, Mayor Carlett. Council members, welcome. This is the second of our scheduled meetings to go over the proposed budget for fiscal year 2016. Just a little bit of a recap, first of all, thank you all for your attention and the great questions and insights that we had in the last meeting. We really appreciate that. As you know, we made good progress moving through the budget, and as requested, we sent out a more detailed list of the topics to be discussed tonight, which I think you all should have received in your email, and hopefully that was helpful. We've put up on the screen that detail so we can be reminded of where we left off, where we will begin. And just to run through that before I turn it back over to Andy Granger, we'll begin by completing the capital improvement program presentation. We got about half, maybe two-thirds of the way through that, I think, last time, right, Andy? Then we will shift into the group we're calling the operations departments for this budget, the way we've kind of grouped these presentations. So that'll be the community services department, the Public Works Department, and our utilities portion of the Public Works Department. Then we'll move into utility rates. That, of course, is an important part of what the budget entails. Much as we have the general fund and the capital improvement fund, we also have the utility funds. So we will go through those funds and discuss the rate pressures and some recommendations we have with respect to rates. Then we will finish with economic development, one of the council's top priorities, and we'll talk about the operating budget, a little bit on the projects that are funded in economic development, and a little bit of conversation about the half-cent sales tax fund, as is noted there. And then we've listed budget wrap-up. So if it's the pleasure of the council, if you're prepared tonight, we will be prepared to have the wrap-up tonight. If not, if you have more that you'd like to talk about, or if we haven't made the kind of progress that it would suggest from this list, we're obviously prepared to come back on Monday evening and finish up with the council. So, Mayor and council members, does that seem reasonable for us this evening?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does. We
Very
have
good.
head shaking all around.
Excellent, excellent. I was reminded that we would request that when you're speaking or asking questions, you are mindful of hitting the button and speaking into the microphone. I think we had a little bit of communication disruption on some of the mics last time, so I've been reminded to remind you. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Andy, and he can finish up on the capital improvement program. Andy?
Thanks, Carl. Mayor and members of the council. As Carl mentioned, we'd like to continue where we left off on Monday with the capital improvement program presentation. Just to remind you of what we did on Monday, we gave a CIP budget overview. We provided some of the accomplishments of some of the projects that we completed in fiscal year 15, some of the projects that we have under construction currently, as well as projects that are under design, primarily streets projects, some of our parks projects, trails projects, trailhead projects, and our stadium improvements. Next, we'd like to talk about a few public works and utilities projects. Then we'll finish with a couple of new fiscal year 16 projects we'd like to highlight in our community works program. We've got 3 public works utilities projects we'd like to highlight that are going to be will undergo in fiscal year 16. That includes our street maintenance program project. That project really helps maintain some of our existing assets as we maintain our streets with that program. Our Pyramid Peak Water Treatment Plant upgrades and expansion, maintains an existing asset in our Pyramid Peak Water Treatment Plant, and then plans for future development in North Peoria with the upgrade and expansion of the Pyramid Peak Water Treatment Plant. And finally, 2 projects, a new well in North Peoria, as well as the Lone Mountain 36-inch water line extension from Lake Pleasant Parkway over to the Loop 303. Again, another project that we'll plan for future growth in North Peoria. So first, just to highlight our street maintenance program, it's an annual program that provides surface treatment to extend the life of our public streets, primarily our local and collector streets. It includes crack sealing of approximately 55 lane miles each year, and then a slurry or microseal surface depending on the nature of the condition of the roadway and if it's a local or collector. And finally, as part of that program, we also restripe where appropriate, primarily on our collector streets. And when we do that restriping process, we really coordinate closely with our Public Works Department and our Engineering Department to see if there's any type of capitalization that we can put on bike lane. We've got a significant bike lane infrastructure across our roadway network, and this is really where we capitalize on that process to increase our bike lane network. When we go back and microseal or slurry seal a street, we look at the possibility of adding new bike lanes throughout our city. This project budget for fiscal year 16 is $2.25 million.
Can I interrupt you there and ask you what kind of a schedule happens to maintain the streets from north to south, south to north? How do you schedule those?
Mayor Carlott, I'll address that. The overall pavement management program is a program where we're inspecting our roadways on a 3-year cycle. So on a 3-year cycle, we will have inspected 100% of all of our roads. We take the information that we get, we look at the condition of the roadways, and then we do a methodical assessment of those, and then we assign a grade point to them, like you would get if you were in school. So a value of 70% or 70 is fair, 80% is good, and new streets, 100% would be excellent. So what we do then is we look at where we can best spend our dollars. It may not be the worst roadway, because that roadway might need to be reconstructed. So we look at those, trying to maintain them above that 70 percentile. So we're taking the available dollars that we have each year and prioritizing on that basis. So I don't have an actual cycle in terms of number of years to address your question directly. I can tell you that a roadway generally will last a 20-year life without any treatment. But what we do is we treat them to extend that life.
Okay, and so do we generally find that that system satisfies our citizens?
There is always one of the most frequent questions that I answer for citizens or to council people on behalf of citizens is, when are you going to do something with my roadway? And the reality is most of our roadways are in that 70 percentile or higher. But what they see is the most common type of repair that we do is crack seal, where we're trying to keep moisture out of the base of the roadways. But people find that to be unattractive. So you've got an otherwise competent roadway. We go in there and we put these spider webs on there, and that people, the appearance of it is not great. They always like to see when we go in and do the slurry seal, such as you see on these photographs here, because that gives it that new appearance. But the reality is a crack seal project is a great way to extend the life of a roadway. So it is a frequently asked question. There's always a desire to do more. It is an expensive program, but the best way to spend your dollars is to spend them early and do these kind of treatments here, the crack seal, those kinds of things to extend the life of those pavements.
So in doing the crack seal method, how long until you then have to come back and do the entire slurry seal?
You may not see, sometimes we do the crack seal just prior to a slurry seal project. So in other words, we may do a crack seal in some areas of the city right now in preparation for a surface treatment that might happen in the fall or in the spring, a micro seal such as you see here. A crack seal can extend the life, again, if you're talking minor cracks, they can extend the life by 5 years. You may not need to do anything else in that period.
Mayor Carlett, if I might add a little bit to that, this is one area that long-term we will need to dedicate more funding toward. Because if you just think of the age of the community and the age of our streets, we've been a pretty young community, if you will, a new city. But as the city ages and the infrastructure ages, that will necessitate an increase in funding for the kinds of pavement management measures that Bill has just described. So it is something that we are paying attention to long-term, that we will eventually need to dedicate more funds towards.
And I think that is something that we might need to do that sooner rather than later. You know, we talk about doing the things that help keep the values up for our neighborhoods and for the home values and resale and everything, and putting those spiderweb things in the street for 5 years does not help their property values. So, as a matter of fact, it hinders property values, in my belief. And so if we could look at a way of maybe making some slight changes to how we grade, maybe instead of saying at 70% we go in and do this, maybe it's 80%, maybe it's 60%, you know, whichever way it has to go in order for us to have them have those things for less time. Maybe the slurry seal goes on sooner rather than the amount of time that it's been now. It's not just about road maintenance, it's also about property values. And I
Very
think that
clearly,
if we took that into consideration in making our assessments, it might be a little more palatable to the people who live and pay for that, who live there and pay for that. So I'd like us to look at maybe the way we assess that and maybe in time make some changes. And if we have to put money towards that, we'll have to make that assessment then also. Council, are you all right with that?
So maybe this is something we would bring back at a future study session or one of your seminars to drill down a little bit on for future funding and to get a more extensive presentation on the pavement management system.
Right.
And where those interventions make the most sense. Because there's certain timing with respect to the life of a pavement, if you will, that inserting an intervention is most beneficial versus, some interventions that we might do earlier that don't have as beneficial an impact. Right, Bill? Am I
Yes,
saying
absolutely.
that correctly? Okay. So what, if it's okay with council, then we would maybe put this on the list of something to bring back for further discussion.
That's good with me. So I'm fine with this year's budget, and then we come back and do, talk about an analysis of ways that we can maybe change the program and improve it.
We'd be pleased to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Our next project that we'd like to discuss is our Pyramid Peak Water Treatment Plant Upgrades and Expansion Project. And this is really two separate projects. The first project is a funded project through the City of Glendale and a Peoria partnership for shared planned upgrades to the Pyramid Peak Water Treatment Plant. The city owns approximately 23% of the Pyramid Peak Water Treatment Plant. There's currently a study ongoing to look at what kind of upgrades and maintenance need to be done at the water treatment plant to make sure that from an ongoing standpoint that our water supply system is redundant and meets the needs of our citizens and our water supply system. Currently, the water treatment plant supplies 11 million gallons per day of water to the city. So we want to ensure that we make sure that the equipment that's there, the upgrades are in place to make sure that it operates functionally. The second part of and we have our share of that is $1.5 million over the next 3 years. The second project is a plan for the future, the development of growth in North Peoria. For instance, the expansion of, or the growth of Vistantia, the growth of Lake Pleasant Heights, and the growth of, and the development of Saddleback Heights. And so we are working with Glendale to look at ways to expand the treatment plant at Pyramid Peak by an additional 10 million gallons per day of production water capacity for the city of Peoria. And that plant expansion isn't cheap. As you can see here, the plant expansion we've got funded at $80 million over the next 3 years, which is approximately 8% of our entire 10-year capital program. But that is what we need to plan for future growth. So that is what we have here, and I don't know if Bill wants to add anything on as far as what our discussions are with Glendale.
First, Andy's done a great job of outlining that. Where we are with Glendale is we have a draft agreement, so we've been working with my counterpart, the utilities director in Glendale. We have a draft agreement for the expansion. So we're just working through that draft and hope to get that in a place where we can bring it to council here in the next month or two. That would be my fondest hope.
The expansion, first of all, congratulations on getting it to this point. I know it's been a long haul. But how, this expansion of 10 million gallons per day, how long into the future will that accommodate Peoria?
Mayor Carla, that'll probably serve us, again, depending on how growth is, but I would expect that it's going to put us in good stead for about the next 15 years.
Great. Quite a legacy. Good job. Questions, council? Okay.
Our last project is how are we going to distribute that water across the city, across North Peoria, to get it to those developments? And these two projects help do that. One, a new well at the intersection of Lake Pleasant Parkway and Loop 303 provides additional capacity in the near term for our water supply. That new well will cost approximately $3.3 million and should be installed within the next year. And second is a development agreement that we're working with Vistantia, Lake Pleasant Heights, and Saddleback Heights to extend the Lone Mountain water line from Lake Pleasant Parkway over to the Loop 303. Our funded share, our portion of that development agreement would be for the oversizing of the water line that's needed for their development. So our funding is $3.9 million, and that's to increase the line to a 36-inch water line so that other developments will be able to utilize that water supply also. We're currently at the final stages of that development agreement. We hope to bring it to council here in the next couple of months so that we can move forward with the construction of that water line across so that we can supply and have a redundant water supply and a secure water source for all of those developments west of the Agua Fria.
I have another question. When new developments come on board that we don't already know about, will they have impact fees that will be able to contribute to the cost of this, that they'll be able to repay us then?
Mayor Carla, the $3.9 million that the city will be paying for this would be just for those folks. In other words, those folks that are not, don't already have the master plan developments. Andy omitted one important player, and that's Trilogy West. They're also a partner in this. I don't want to leave them off. But we have been working, it's a true public-private partnership. We've got Saddleback Heights, Lake Pleasant Heights, you've got Vistancia, and you've got Trilogy West working all together with the city of Peoria. A very complex agreement to get this key piece of infrastructure in there. And yes, there is capacity for growth outside those developments, and that's what Peoria is participating in. And the cost would be in impact fees.
Perfect. Thank you.
Next, we want to introduce two new projects to the capital program for fiscal year 16, the Beardsley Road Channel Improvements and the Northern Parkway Project. And we've got two slides to explain both of these projects. Our Beardsley Road Channel Project is proposed to shotcrete or provide some kind of hardened liner for the existing earthen channel along the south side of Beardsley Road from 99th Avenue to 111th Avenue. Currently, there's a lot of maintenance involved with this, both from Ventana Lakes as well as the city of Peoria for this earthen channel. It's also somewhat of an eyesore for the adjacent residents. So this project proposes to provide a colored shotcrete or some kind of concrete hardened liner for that channel, as well as improve landscaping between the back of curb and the edge of right-of-way, as well as sidewalk where we can accommodate it on that south side. So it's really an aesthetic improvement project for the neighborhood. But it also improves and lessens the maintenance requirements that the city of Peoria has, as well as Ventana Lakes. So this project in the past has been in the capital program. It hasn't been in the capital program for several years because of the original scope was to pipe this channel. And it was a $5 to $6 million proposition, which we really didn't have the capacity to fund in past capital projects, so we put it near the end of the capital program. In this proposed capital program, we have the design in this fiscal year, and we intend to construct this project. The schedule is for construction in fiscal year 17 for this concept. Next, our Northern Parkway project has also been in the capital program in the past, but it hasn't been in our capital program for the last several years. It's a multi-jurisdictional project between Maricopa County, Glendale, El Mirage, and the city of Peoria to improve Northern Parkway from Loop 303 to Grand Avenue. It is projected that approximately 80,000 cars per day will use our Northern Parkway by 2035. This project, this interim improvement project is approximately a $321 million project between the jurisdictions, as well as the federal funding that's been granted for this project. The city currently has an IGA that commits us to funding our portion of the project, which is approximately $19 million, but we haven't been a part of the project for the last 3 years. Just to give you a little status on the background of the project, Phase 1 was completed for this project from Loop 303 to Dysart Road. We are currently in the Phase 2 design portion of the project from Dysart Road to 111th Avenue, which begins to start the construction and the impacts, the construction impacts that will come into the city of Peoria. Our western limits, city limits, are 115th Avenue. So from 115th Avenue to 111th Avenue, we'll start to see improvements as the Phase 2 construction starts here in the near future. And that includes a bridge over the Agua Fria, which when we have our significant rainfall events, typically Northern Avenue right now gets closed, and we've got to find alternate routes to cross from the east to the west. This project also includes intersection improvements at Loop 101 and Northern, similar to the improvements that we've conducted in the past at Olive Avenue and Loop 101, as well as Thunderbird and 101. That's planned for fiscal year 16. My anticipation is that that will be delayed a little bit. Probably the design will be in fiscal year 16, and probably the construction will be in fiscal year 17. And then the improvements from 111th Avenue to 103rd Avenue are planned for construction in fiscal years 23 and 24, which is still about 7 years away. The project budget for fiscal year 16 is $1.6 million, and we have a consistent budget of committing $1.6 million in our proposed capital budget for the next 10 years to fund this project as part of the IGA requirement. It's actually, if you take it out, it would be an extra, for the next 11 years, at $1.6 million would be our financial commitment at this time. On the right, you can see some of the renderings of potentially some alternative access or alternative design concepts to meet some of the citizen needs for the impacts that this project potentially could have on adjacent neighbors. So the county, a couple of years, conducted an alternative concept study and developed a couple of different concepts. One being in the southernmost concept, or the southernmost picture on the PowerPoint slide, shows an overpass of 107th Avenue, 107th Avenue over Northern Parkway to provide access, full access at 103rd Avenue. So that roadway basically goes over 107th Avenue. There's a potential for a conceptual park at 107th Avenue on the northwest and southwest corners, as well as access. The full access will come at 103rd Avenue for those residents. So it provides a little bit more of a residential feel, as well as sound walls to help protect from the increased traffic volumes that are projected along Northern Parkway. The middle slide shows a pedestrian overpass for the students to get to Country Meadows on the north side of Northern Parkway, from the south side for those students that walk to school. So those are some of the concepts that are being looked at to incorporate into the project.
Councilmember Leone.
Yes, I guess you was reading my mind, huh?
Yeah.
So I'm going to bend your ear. We had a meeting today, and I'm still not satisfied with what we talked about. You were saying it's still under review with this new person coming in. Am I right? I mean, let me hear you say it. Am I right?
Yes, Councilman Leone, what has happened over the last year with the Maricopa County Department of Transportation, which is the lead agency for this project, is they've had a change in leadership. They've got a new director on board, and they've committed to looking at alternative concepts. They're doing an overall audit of the project itself. It's a massive project. It's a $320 million project that we've just completed phase 1 of. So they're going back and looking at what is the financial commitment from all of the agencies, looking at what is projected as far as the future phases. They're looking at, do we have the financial ability still to complete all of the phases? And if not, what kind of value engineering can we do? Or what type of alternative concepts can we look at to improve Northern Parkway?
Today, you told me that there's 4 lanes coming from 303, 2 on each side. Am I correct?
That's the proposed interim
That-
concept.
that's
to
already
100
done.
It's not done from Dysart to 111th Avenue yet.
No,
That's the proposed project
But
that will be done.
but it's going to go that far.
Yes.
Then beyond that, you want to widen it to 3 lanes on each side. And my question to you was that, why widen it to 3 lanes when it's already 4 lanes, just like the ones from the 303 coming down? Now you're going to go to 4 lanes or 6 lanes. And what's the purpose of that? 4 and 4 all the way down to 79th Avenue, 71st Avenue, all the way to Grand, or beyond, I think it's 79th Avenue, it has to be widened. But as far as 83rd and beyond that, it's already 4 lanes. Am I right?
That's correct.
So my question to you is that you said that they were going to look into that.
Yeah, that's my intent, is to have them evaluate the necessity for us to widen from 111th Avenue to 103rd Avenue to 6 lanes, and even potentially wider than that for turning movements. So I think there's the potential to basically narrow that in the interim before the and then maybe we potentially obtain all of the ultimate right-of-way in the near term, but do not build the ultimate improvements or the improvements that are proposed from 111th to 103rd. I think we can narrow that and lessen the impact that may be on the adjacent residents.
And my question is, if they're going to look into it, and they feel it should stay at 4 lanes, 2 lanes on each side, could they do that? Or they still want to make it 6 lanes?
Well, that's what we'll have to have further discussions on.
So that's still in the books. It could stay as 4 lanes, 2 lanes on each side, right?
That's my intent for them to evaluate that, yes.
And if they do that, does that mean you don't have to take any homes away, or take any property away?
That's something that they'll have to evaluate. Because of the access control that's proposed right now as part of the Parkway concept, there potentially is still some residences that need to be taken so that we can have alternative connections to our major arterials to make sure that they can get to Northern Parkway. So that's something that we're going to evaluate. I want to lessen the impacts to the neighborhood as much as possible, but that's my commitment, and that's what the director is open to for Maricopa County, to look into that.
So if they leave it the way it is, then there'll be no bridges, right?
No bridges.
Yeah, it shows on the map here.
If they didn't, well, this is still the potential concept. That's one of the things that we would want to look at. But yeah, there's the potential that we wouldn't need to have bridges over Northern Parkway.
And on those bridges, how many lanes will they be?
Are you talking about in this concept of 107th going over Northern?
Yeah, 107th and the one 103rd.
That acts as actually like a local roadway, so it would be 1 lane in each direction.
How many?
Just 1 lane in each direction.
1 lane each direction. And how about the other one? Are they both the same?
Well, there's only one bridge. The other one's a pedestrian bridge. That middle one's a
So it'll be
pedestrian.
1 lane each direction on both. And now, okay, the question that I have, what if there's an accident and they close those lanes off? What happens then?
An accident on 107th Avenue?
No, on those bridges.
Well, there's alternative access. They'd have to detour around there. I mean, it depends on where the accident would be.
Okay, now at 108th Avenue, how are the people going to get out? Are they going to block all the streets off? Now you tell me they weren't going to block them all off.
The proposal is for 103rd or 108th Avenue to be in both of these concepts, for it to be blocked off, and that's how they would access through an alternative local roadway connection over to the 107th Avenue alignment. And that's where they would go over the bridge and access at 103rd Avenue for access to Northern Park.
But you said 106th Avenue wouldn't be blocked off. You can only make a right turn going towards Luke Air Force Base.
at there may still be write-ins and write-outs. It depends on what access point we're talking about. These are just concepts that we haven't voted upon to adopt. So that's where I'm saying there's opportunities to work with the county and the other agencies.
So you really
to
don't know
improve.
what the deal is on this at all?
No, these are concepts
They
that it's.
So why are we spending the money to give it to them? Why don't we just take it out of the CIP plan, the budget, and just wait until you get the full measure on it, so we'll know just what we're talking about? Right now, I still don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I hear you, but I'm not familiar with it, because earlier today, it told me 106th Avenue, you can go in, you can get out to go look Air Force Base, and you can only come in by left turn, but now you're telling me they're gonna block all these streets off. So I really don't know,
Let me,
what you're gonna do.
What I can tell you is that the construction of the areas that you're concerned about is from 2023 and 2024. So these are concepts right now that we can refine, we can revise, we can work with the neighborhood still on when we get closer to the design and construction that's going to happen 7 years from now. But our commitment is that we're going to when we entered into that IGA, it was to fund the first few phases of this project also. So it's not just the 111th to 103rd Avenue improvements. It included that Phase 1 improvements from Loop 303 to Dysart Road. It includes the Phase 2 improvements from Dysart to 111th Avenue. It includes the interchange improvements at Northern Parkway. So although those are the improvements that you're concerned about mostly, we still have to fund these other improvements as a part of our commitment through the IGA.
So for the last 3 or 4 years, we haven't funded.
No, we have not.
We have not. Well, I just think that we should wait and let's see just what it's going to be altogether. Maybe, like you say, there's a new person coming in. The guy with the cowboy hat, he's gone. So let's just wait and see what this new person says. Maybe she wants to keep it the way it is now. And if they do that, then that means there's no bridges, there's no houses coming down, there's no property being taken away. And
Councilman,
kids.
Councilmember Leone?
I'd like,
Mr. Berg, would you please speak to our obligation to fund this project?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So, Mr. Granger really hit all the high points as far as the history on this project. The intergovernmental agreement that the city entered into is a contract, just like any other contract that the city signs. Because of that contract, the city is obligated to fulfill the dollar amounts that we agreed to do. Now, the details of that can be worked out to the planning and other things as the project moves along, as Mr. Granger talked about. But the city is obligated to expend that money at the time when it's required to be spent, and obviously it hasn't been up until now because we haven't reached that phase. But as we do reach that phase, we're contractually obligated to spend the money on the project.
But we haven't paid them for 3 or 4 years.
Because they haven't asked us for anything, because it hasn't gotten to, this portion of the Peoria portion of the project.
right, Councilmember Leone, we're now at the point in that agreement where we will need to start making financial contributions, as Mr. Granger has said. And he has been working very closely with the engineers from the county on mitigating and lessening the impacts which these drawings illustrate. And I think that the next best step is to continue his good work on our citizens' behalf and report back to the council periodically as we do CIP updates on the progress that he's been making. But we do need to show the project in our budget because, as Mr. Berg says, we are contractually obligated to make the payments, and consistent with our financial management policies, we need to show all of our obligations in our primary financial document, which is our budget.
Yeah, this has been going on since 2002, if I remember. And I don't know if you wasn't here at the time, I don't think, but how it came about that there's only 4 people that knew about this: the mayor and the city manager of Glendale, and the mayor and city manager of Peoria behind closed doors. And then when it came out in the paper, and I got more phone calls then you can't believe on this. But there's a lot more to it than what he's just saying, you know, a lot more to it. And people are just still upset about it. And I just want to let you know that I don't support this at this time unless I can see the whole thing and talk to this new person. I can't support this, and I can't support this in the budget. That's all. I just want to make that clear to you and to everybody here in the council that I have to represent my people. They elected me, not you, not Andy, but me. So I got to represent them to the best of my ability. And it's just like anybody else here, when they're elected by their people, they have to listen to them. Just like I listen to mine. I still got all those over 300 petitions here, and I saved them because I never know when you're going to need them. But anyway, I just agree with this whole concept unless you can really show me what you're going to do. Thank you, Mayor. Didn't mean to bother your ears.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to talk about that.
Pardon me?
I want to say something about
Oh,
that.
okay.
Are we still there?
Yes, you can
Okay.
comment.
Well, I was on the council when we voted on this. Seems hard to believe it was 2002, but if it was, it was. I remember we studied it a lot. I don't know about closed-door sessions or anything. I just know when it was brought before us, there was a lot of community support, other than Carlos District, where it does impact those people more personally. But there was a lot of support for the widening of Northern Avenue because it's a mess down there. It's just too narrow for a lot of reasons for people going back and forth. And then I was not on council for the last 4 years when the council voted, I guess, to take it away or to withhold the funds, however that came down. And I was frankly shocked because I remembered making a commitment to do that, to support it for 10 years and to make payments. And again, I had a lot of people who read the paper and said, what in the world are they doing? What I thought we were going to do, we need this, is this going to stop the parkway? I mean, they didn't understand all the details, but to them it was something that they wanted, that they were happy that council had agreed to do. So I'm very happy that this has come back now. I was feeling kind of bad that I'd put my name out there and then it wasn't happening. So I completely support this. And I did have a question, and you might have, so we don't, the 3 or 4 years we didn't pay, that hasn't backlogged, and now we have to pay $4 million. That we just, what happened? Because we should have been paying those 3 or 4 years, should we not have?
I think probably Andy's best one to describe the sequencing there.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, during the last several years that we didn't pay, we had an obligation, our first year that this wasn't in the capital program, it was around $1 million. And then since then, for the last 2 or 3 years, we didn't have an obligation. So the obligations to pay every year were somewhat inconsistent, and we'd have a $1 million obligation one year, and there's some years where it was showing as $5 or $6 million. And we've worked with the county to look at the cash flow requirements for this project and look at if we can just distribute it evenly. It makes it easier for our staff and our finance department to pay an even check. So based on that and based on the cash flow requirements of the project, they said that they would agree if we just paid $1.6 million a year for the next 11 years. And El Mirage is going to have a similar agreement, I believe, to do something along the same fashion on a lower amount. They've got a less of an obligation than we do. But that's why, even though it probably was going to be a more significant obligation, we were looking at $5 or $6 million that would be due in fiscal year 16. They've allowed us, if we incorporate this back into our program, to fund it at $1.6 million per year.
So wait a minute. I know I'm not the math guy, but
Just spreading it
a
evenly.
million, but then 5 or 6 million won't be due next year in 16. Is that what you just said?
That's correct. Instead, we're going to spread it out over time. So if over the next
Okay.
10 years consistently, we'll have $1.6 million. Instead of spending or sending a check for $5 million
Okay.
next year as part of the project, and then the next year it being $1 million, and then the next year being, another million or nothing, it's just going to be $1.6 million
Okay.
consistently.
And I just want to say one more thing. Carlo, I'm not unsympathetic to
Yes, you are.
No, I'm really not. But I think as elected officials, we have to look at the broader good. And if it were my district, I know what I would say to people is you're going to be very well compensated for your homes, and that this is necessary. I would attempt to make them understand that it was for the greater good, and that's why I support this. I'm not unsympathetic to folks who love their houses and so on, but this happens time and time again, to put a freeway through, or because that's better for the most of the people, and that's what I'm here for.
Mr. Leone?
It is your district too, by the way. And people,
But it doesn't
and people, oh yeah, people in your district has putting stuff in the papers about Northern Parkway. And believe me, they don't like it either. And the other thing is, I don't know what she's talking about. Northern Avenue isn't messed up. What's messed up about it? It's got new roads. He asked Bill, he just put them in, and it's what? So it wasn't from 303 all the way down to the Narrows, 4 lanes.
Okay, this conversation can be had offline by the two of you if you'd like.
Well, I just want to
Let's
finish
move on
up.
with the budget
And
conversation.
besides, do you drive Northern Avenue every day? No. Do you
Okay.
drive it once a week? No. Do you drive it once a month? No. You never go down there.
Mr. Leone,
So,
we are
the thing
moving
what I'm saying
on.
is that I think you're wrong. You have no consideration for the people, even in your district.
Thank you for your comments. Please move on.
The last thing on our agenda before we can accommodate any questions that you may have is our Community Works program. And typically every year we give an update on our Community Works program and highlight some of the projects that we've accomplished, as well as some of the new projects that will be part of the new program going forward. The Community Works program is a program that's been around, I believe, for just over 10 years now within the city of Peoria, and it really incorporates into our capital program some of those smaller projects that are typically less than $100,000 that wouldn't normally get into our capital program, except for the fact that we've got it as a group of projects in an overall Community Works program project. And so the types of projects that we have are listed on the PowerPoint slide in front of you, and they're really projects that help improve the livability throughout our city, and improve the quality of the neighborhoods throughout the city. They include, from a streets perspective, new signing, striping, and traffic control projects, concrete and asphalt improvements on local roadways and collector roadways, where we have missing sidewalk components or street improvements that need to be conducted. Bike lane retrofits, as we talked about earlier, in conglomeration with some of our roadway improvements and surface improvements. Sidewalk widening and crosswalk installation, as well as from a community services perspective, we talk about right-of-way landscape enhancements, shade structures at some of our parks, or improvements to shade structures at some of our parks, and tree replacements where necessary, where trees have been overgrown and we need to replace them, where we call it the Right Tree, Right Place program. To highlight one of our projects from this year in our Community Works program is our old Carefree Highway Roadway Improvements project. This project's been around for a few years now. It started when we looked at a couple of the bridges across the MWD Canal north of the old Carefree Highway alignment for access to the Canyon Speedway, as well as Cowtown up west of MWD Canal. There was a detour that always had to be made, and it was over bridges that, from a safety perspective, were less than what would meet our requirements from the bridges within our city. So we worked with both Canyon Speedway and Cowtown, and Canyon Speedway took the lead on the project and coordinated a new bridge, the construction of a new bridge with APS, funding a lot of this project to put a new bridge across that MWD Canal along the old Carefree alignment. You can see on the bottom right-hand corner, the view looking north, is that the construction of that bridge in progress. We anticipate the construction of this project being complete from the private development side. They're developing the bridge and the roadway improvements except for the paving as part of this project. And the city agreed as part of our Community Works program to come through and extend the asphalt from where it ends just east of the just east of the MWD Canal. We'll extend that roadway to the west to just in front of Canyon Speedway to improve the access to Canyon Speedway and Cowtown. So our fiscal portion, or our funded portion of this project is $90,000 and should be completed this summer.
That took a while, didn't it? Can I insert something here?
Sure.
I hope this is the right place to put this. Councilmember Binbacher could not be here tonight, and so she met with city staff and made some comments about the items that we were going to be discussing tonight, and she sent them to me. So under CIP, I believe in this portion of the CIP, she made this comment that I'm going to read right now. In our retreat, we asked that options be considered for partnering with schools or other facilities in northern Peoria that may be able to offer us use of their lighted fields for practices and games until we have our own facilities. Families are driving up to 45 minutes one way to southern locations such as Cheyenne Elementary, Pioneer Park, and Rio Vista Park for 5:30 and 7:30 p.m. baseball, softball, and soccer practices. This creates scheduling and transportation obstacles that many families are not able to overcome. We must come up with some creative solutions to offer the same program opportunities to families in northern districts as we do in others. And so I wanted to insert that comment here for the record into this portion of our CIP on behalf of Councilmember Binsbacher.
Yeah, and that may also feed into the conversation we're going to have about the Community Services Department budget in a few minutes, because that's really about the relationship that department has with some of the entities that you mentioned there, the schools and others, as well as potential funding for some improvements.
Good, thank you.
Another example of a successful community services project over the past years, the basketball court renovations that we've done at several of our parks, Varney Park, Deer Village Park, and Paseo Verde Park, all received basketball court improvements, and you can see them here, what the courts looked like before we conducted our project and what they look like now. So just something that we can be proud of as far as our Community Works program from a community services standpoint. And just one last project I want to highlight is our park improvements project. We moved at our Parkridge Park. We had a dog park on the north side of this park, and it was adjacent to some of the neighborhood adjacent to the park, and so we received several complaints about the dog park being in such close proximity to the residences. So we've actually, as part of our Community Works program this past year, moved the dog parks closer to Beardsley on the south side of the park, added shade, added new landscaping, and it's actually a larger dog park than it was before. So another successful Community Works program project.
Yeah,
Vice Mayor Edwards? Oh,
Okay, I just wanted to add, this has been one of those programs within our budget that's been real popular. Since we started the Community Works portion of our capital improvement program, we have expanded that on a number of occasions, and again this year have put some additional general fund revenue into this program by about $300,000 so that we can do more of these kinds of projects in the community, because the citizens really appreciate these small projects that we can do in the neighborhood. So, sorry.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Annie, on this particular park, I appreciate this park too, because I go to this park every other day with my dogs, and so I love this new addition. I do have a question for you though, on where the location of the old small dog park was. There's still the shade structure is still in place. When is that going to be moved to the large dog park? Because since I'm there every other day, I get residents that are asking me that question, that we have a shade structure that's not being utilized in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't have any benches under it anymore, and so it needs to be moved. Since this park was completed, I'm not sure how many months ago, that hasn't been done yet.
Okay, let me follow up with our staff and make sure that gets done for you.
Thank you.
This is just a list of some of the proposed fiscal year 16 Community Works program projects that we are proposing. This is from an engineering perspective. We've got a streets fund of $500,000. I want to highlight one of the projects that we've got for council is our Community Works Quick Response Fund of $155,000. That's where some of those smaller projects that sometimes we may say, we don't have the funding this year, and we've got to wait till next year to incorporate that into the budget. This is where we can respond quickly to some of those smaller projects that are either street improvement projects or sidewalk projects to help council respond to our citizens quickly. So that's been an effective program over the past several years. We've also got a neighborhood drainage program that's improving. It's budgeted at $350,000 this year and includes several of the projects listed, and also another project our program that we've received a lot of favorable feedback from the neighborhoods and HOAs from that don't have a lot of money to spend on significant, from their perspective, capital projects that for drainage problems where they've got ponding that's lasted, weeks during heavy rainfall events. So this project's grown in popularity, and we're addressing some of those concerns on an annual basis now.
Vice Mayor?
Can you go back? Thank you, Mayor. Can you go back? Bill, this question would be for you. I know you've done a phenomenal job working with the school district over for Sunrise Mountain Basin. Do you have an update as to when that may be completed? I know that we're kind of waiting on them I guess we're going to do a cost share of the project. Is that going to be completed before the monsoon season hits so that the residents in that area are not bombarded with mosquitoes like they were last year?
Vice Mayor Edwards, what we're talking about is a project that we proposed where we would share cost to install some dry wells to help drain those basins more quickly than they're draining today. The status of that right now is we have an agreement in principle with the school district. We're crafting an IGA, and I hope to be bringing that to council in the next month or so, so that we can begin that process. The actual construction shouldn't take too long. It's conceivable we could get it done before the monsoons come in, but it really is contingent on when we get that final IGA crafted.
And the 60,000 that's our share of this?
No, actually, that's another project.
Excellent.
This is addressing, you may be familiar that it's on the same school site, but this is more on the roadway where they've experienced some erosion on the roadway, over bank, and that would address this. The dry well project is not included in this budget because we anticipated doing it earlier. We didn't think we'd be doing it in FY16.
Okay.
It may indeed be there, so it would mean an amendment at that point in time as well as the IGA.
Okay, thank you.
Just to highlight one of the projects on that list, there's been complaints by Trilogy residents in particular at the entrance to Trilogy and Vistantia Boulevard about how difficult it potentially is to turn out of Trilogy onto Vistantia Boulevard and go taking a left turn out and getting onto Vistantia Boulevard going northwest. So we've worked with the HOA and the HOA manager to come up with a concept. We don't believe the appropriate action is to put a traffic signal in here, which is what a lot of the residents were looking for, but we do believe that an improvement will be to place an acceleration lane, modify the wide landscape median near the intersection, and provide that acceleration lane that you can see in the picture on the PowerPoint slide that provides refuge for those travelers going to the northwest before they have to enter into the through lane. So this is one of our Community Works projects that we'll be going forward with in fiscal year 16. This list shows the community services projects proposed for next year. One of the projects that we'd like to highlight is the Community Garden Program, which we've got $20,000 allocated to for a citywide effort to start a community garden program across the city. And three of the other projects that we'd like to highlight from that list include the Kiwanis Park playground equipment replacement, the Country Meadows tennis court repair. You can see the condition of the tennis courts there at Country Meadows, as well as some fence that needs to be repaired. And then pool deck repair across the city of Peoria for some of our city pools that we'll incorporate into our Community Works program over the next year. And with that, that concludes our formal presentation. If you have any questions or any other projects that you'd like to discuss, we can do that now.
Ms. Hunt?
I'm still not sure where the trees on Monroe come. Didn't you tell me it would be in the capital, what we just did?
CIP?
Yep. Councilwoman Hunt, in speaking with our Community Services Director, John Sefton, what we were looking at is getting with you and kind of getting a better idea of what you're looking for there.
Okay.
We do have, I believe it's $30,000 in our Community Works program for quick response to right-of-way landscaping issues that would be similar to that. So that may be an opportunity in the existing budget to utilize some of those funds for that project.
Thank you. Yes.
And that's all we had on our capital improvement program. Thank you, Andy. Nice job, and thanks for doing it in two parts. We
Just one
appreciate
moment.
that.
I just want to
Oh,
make
I'm
one
sorry.
comment. I thought that was a great job. You were on the hot seat for 2 days straight, $100 and some million worth of projects and just rattling off responses. So I just want to tell you, I appreciate your effort and your time, and I've been in that seat, maybe not as long as that in presentations, but that was a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Finn, we appreciate that. And he does a great job building the projects, too, not just the presentations.
Yeah, saves a lot of money from them.
So now we'll be moving into the operations portion, and this will be our Community Services Department and our Public Works Department. So we'll begin with Community Services. And this, of course, is the department that includes so many of the services that our citizens enjoy and depend on, from library services to our Parks and Recreation program, our sports complex, a whole host of programs that we talk about frequently at council meetings and our citizens love to enjoy. And of course, special events, which are a growing part of our community character and culture as well. There are 137 employees, roughly, in the department, and about a $29 million overall budget for all of the services that I just mentioned. You'll note here that we have the Commission for Accreditation for Parks and Recreation agencies on there. That's something that we're very proud of. As you know, we just received that this past year. And kudos again to John Sefton and his staff to get our most recent accreditation, and we're now accredited in all of the services where accreditations exist. So, Katie, I'll look to you to give a little bit of information on the next slide. We're going back to our back and forth here now.
Microphone. Okay. So just wanted to go through a little bit of the community services operating budget. As you know, as Carl mentioned, we have a lot of very important programs and services provided to our community through the Community Services Department. One thing that, from a budgetary perspective in the operating budgets, many of our recreation programs do include revenues that offset some of those costs. He's talked about the $29 million. We certainly collect revenues through user fees for some of those program costs. It also includes, obviously, our important facilities that we have scattered throughout the city. That includes parks, our trails facilities, all of our recreation facilities, and our aquatic centers. So, these are all things that require the city to continue to look at on a regular basis, and you'll see in some of their approach this year to their budget was really to deal with some of the repair and maintenance of those assets and trying to maintain those assets. Additionally, we're looking at doing a number of things related to professional development within theirs. Oh, and I should mention, this year, as part of our capital improvement program, which I don't think Andy touched on specifically, but we did provide some one-time funding to the Community Services Department, the Public Works, primarily facilities area, and the IT department for things specifically related to repair, maintenance, and ensuring that we have some ability to deal with some of those assets that maybe haven't been given as much attention through the downturn, that now we're finding that we need to put some investments in those areas. So we had about $1.5 million that we were able to use with that, spread out among those areas. And that's been a very important key piece to kind of continuing that, meeting all those needs for all those areas and doing all those things that make these assets worthwhile on a long-term basis. So,
And that's an important, I'm going to interrupt for just a second, Katie, but that's an important part to highlight, because much as we were talking about the age of our streets a few minutes ago, we also have aging infrastructure with respect to our Parks and Recreation program. And as you know, we have had some significant projects, and still do, with respect to, say, the sports complex, where we've got Phase 3 funded in that, as Andy talked about the other night. And as the picture shows here, we did our community center complete rebuild recently. And those are the large examples that we see and feel and we notice as a large investment in the community, but there's a whole lot of smaller ones that we're making too to keep our city facilities top-notch. I think as you get around the city, you'll notice that we continue to invest well in those facilities, and it's something our citizens really appreciate.
And it's a very large and diverse department, and part of what we want to ensure is that we have the right kinds of equipment, supplies available. So you will see in the budget, the overall budget, in addition to their normal repair, maintenance, supply line items, there are some things that they're looking to add this year, which would include some support in special events, as well as some of their recreation programs to try to continue to meet the demands of the program. And in some cases, those are revenue offset, and you can see those in your book as well. In other important areas include the park and trail equipment and supplies, continuing as we have a growing system, we have to continue to meet some of the maintenance requirements there. We also have new right-of-way areas through CIP projects that we've had to take on through our right-of-way contract. So those are included in the budget request. And of course, with our stadium and the facility improvements that we've seen there, we want to ensure that we have the right kind of program support out there, including tables, chairs, the types of things that are really going to, hopefully, with these new improvements, draw people in and have them spend time at the sports complex and rent the facility, and we need to have the right kind of equipment and supplies there as well. Additionally, in the budget, there are some opportunities because what did Carl say? 137 FTEs in the Community Services Department. It's a pretty robust department with a lot of diverse but very specially trained staff in a bunch of different areas. So we are trying to ensure that we have the right kind of training and professional development for a number of those staff, as well as take care of some of those continuous seasonal workers who are in our community and really are the boots on the ground when it comes to community services, providing those services on a day-to-day basis. All of those recreation programmers in our AMPM program, our summer rec program, our lifeguards, those are kind of the essential key to getting that program going, all those programs going. So we'd like to include it in the budget as some available funding for us to provide them with some when I say pay adjustments, not necessarily just to their rate of pay, but it's more to provide some incentives for them, for only those who really continue on a year-to-year basis with the city and some of those programs, and that consistency is really important, to our department, or to the Community Services Department. Also, just want to touch on a couple of positions. I'd like to mention these as part of as we discussed through here. There is a request to continue to help in our youth and teen area related to the programming, the increased programming that we have there. So, and some reorganization that they've done there and how they've realigned some of their program areas. So we have a recreation coordinator as well as an aquatics maintenance worker. We are growing, and we have one person right now with some part-time staffing that is maintaining all of our pools. So we've reached the point of needing to really address that, and so we're looking to convert those part-time hours to a person and actually have 2 FTEs working through our pool system. The other thing is that through the Community Services Master Plan and through all the work that they've done in getting accredited, there is a lot of opportunities that they believe that they have in terms of marketing and communications and ensuring that we have a good plan for how we market all of our programs and services, and that came out as part of their master plan as a very important item. So I think that you're going to continue to see a lot of what you've seen year to year in community services. I think, we can all agree they do excellent work, and so that's really what this budget package is going to provide is their continued excellence in excellence customer service, excellence related to their programs, facilities, and offerings. Any questions? Okay.
Questions?
Moving on. I'll move on to Public Works. No questions for John?
Actually, I do.
Okay. I was
Vice
just going to
Mayor.
say, how is that possible?
You're not getting off the seat that easy. Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions. For line item for the P83 party, you have it budgeted for $117,000 one-time cost. I'd like to take a look at moving that from a one-time cost to an ongoing cost, but since we are in our 6th year and it is continuing to grow, I'd like to have that open for discussion.
Thank you, Councilmember Edwards. I did forget to mention special events. I don't know how, but I did. Just so you're aware, I mean, you can see in the overall budget package, we're funding special events consistent with the way that we funded them in more recently. And yes, we did have some of that conversation last year about doing that. So I think that there is some opportunity to have some more discussions about that. I really believe that this is something that, because there's so many activities associated and so many events, that it may be a good opportunity for this council to get a chance to talk to that in a much broader discussion, I guess, is what I think we
Yeah, and I'm fine with
propose
that.
to do.
And I'm fine with that. I just want to bring it up
Yep.
have it open for discussion so that everybody can weigh in equally.
I appreciate that, and I think that we do need to have that discussion. And right now, I am going to insert another paragraph that Councilmember Binsbacher asked me to read. This is about special events. Review our current schedule of special events, objectives, income and expenses, impact and participation, potential changes and improvements, event toolkit, checklist to improve planning and efficiency. And so, along with these lines and your request, I think that what we should do is schedule a longer period of time, whether it be a study session or a seminar, to really get down and talk about our special events in detail.
Yeah, I think that would be great. There's been a lot of change in how we've looked at special events over the last couple of years, and I think it'd be a great time for this council to do that.
Okay,
Yeah, good.
good. Everybody okay with that? Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more. John, on page 127 for Fletcher Heights North Park maintenance.
Yep.
Is that a typo? You have it as a one-time cost of $30,000, or shouldn't that be an ongoing cost?
Mayor and council member, vice mayor, good evening, and yes, that is not a typo. That is put in as a one-time through some good deliberation with the budget team here and where the capacity currently exists. The maintenance of the Fletcher Heights North Park has traditionally been a partnership with the adjacent school, as I know you're aware of, and part of their responsibility has been to manage the daily maintenance of that park. It has not been utilized as a park for the past year, and so we're not sure about what is the ultimate outcome of that facility or the ultimate need for use of the park. And there are some legal overlays related to that agreement that we are underway and our legal team is assisting us with. But this, because it's a one-time, gives us the opportunity to examine further what the true need is. I'm confident that we'll be able to maintain the level of service with this amount of money, and that over the next year, we'll have more clear definition on what the role of the park or the school is with the park and moving that forward. So I would see this as something that over time, we will work into our ongoing budget, but this amount does give us the first step in acquiring the maintenance responsibility for the park.
Okay. I'd suggest that you maybe do a mid-year assessment, because you and I have had multiple discussions about this park, and we both know that school's probably, Rancho Solano's gone. They're not coming back. I don't know what's going to happen to that facility, and I'd like to have you and Carl, I'd like to have you guys take a look at, is there a potential that we could pick up that facility, maybe not the entire facility, maybe expand on the park, maybe use some of the buildings for some community service options, but I think we need to look at it, because in looking at the geography in the surrounding area, we have Great Hearts that opened up, and we have other charter schools that are opening up. They're not going to that facility because it doesn't meet their needs. It's too small and it's too old. And so I just truly don't think that that's going to be a viable school anytime soon. So I'd like the city to start looking at what we could possibly do.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's a unique situation.
Yeah.
There isn't another circumstance quite like that in the city, and I think, Vice Mayor, it does require that kind of special thought and forethought about how it might be put to use in a community benefit more than it has been under the past arrangements. I think, as John mentions, this gets us started in that, but we'd be happy to come back, in a mid-year context with a report on what we think, what we found, some ideas. Does that seem sensible, John?
Absolutely, thank you.
And I appreciate that, but I still think the one-time cost of $30,000, that's just for the maintenance. And and I've sent you numerous pictures. There's work to be done at that park to get it to where it's viable. You know, I've had numerous residents comment to me that they don't even use that park anymore. What they use that park for is a dog park, because the facility is not up to par for their kids to play. You've got the gravel is falling down the slopes, down onto the sidewalk. We've got sand still in the play area that has to be upgraded to bark, from my understanding, and those are ADA issues that have to be brought up to speed. I just think we need to put a little bit more money into this park so that people will start using it again. Regardless of what happens to the school, the park is the only amenity in that area that people can use, and if they're not going to use it, shame on us. We need to get some money into it to get it back in shape.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And yes, as far as the assessment of the safety items, all of these things are part of what we do to manage the day-to-day and within the operations. Some of the enhancements that we would envision, turf has always been a challenge there because of the water pressure and other items, but we're going through an extensive, and we're working with some contractors as well to identify the right level of costs associated with the types of improvements that we're talking about. And as you know, throughout our park system, we have very much the conditional assessment that we did with relationship to our community services master plan and a whole series. And as Carl had mentioned and Katie had mentioned, that the additional one-time funding for the repair and the maintenance, this is right in the crosshairs, if you will, of next level for those types of funds. So what we're working through now is to best understand what it will cost to have a contractor to come in and do the types of renovations that you're talking about. And we're doing the same systematically throughout the system. So each of our parks are receiving the same type of attention to that detail. Now, again, the lists are long, and we could certainly spend a whole lot more money, but this presented budget is a balanced budget, and we've got a very good plan that's in place to be able to accomplish a lot of things that is described through the Community Works program, and as this additional one-time funding for the repair and the replacement of some of the park items. So we are acquiring good information. We're addressing any types of safety issues. On one hand, you may hear people that say they don't like to use that park. On the other hand, I witness people using that park every day.
No, I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that it needs to be polished a little bit. And like I said, I think I'm not asking for a bucket load of money. I'm just looking for you to do a reassessment of it and come back to us in a reasonably short time to say, your study shows that we need to spend $20,000 to get this park back in shape. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for, I don't want to come back at a mid-year adjustment. I don't want to come back next year at this time and you come back and say, well, yeah, we do need to spend $50,000. I want it sooner than later.
Okay, let me kind of try this as a solution, because I hear you. I've visited the park. I know what you mean. This is the sort of enhancement or improvement or refresh that is anticipated and purposed in our Community Works program. And as we set these projects out in our Community Works program, we keep some flexibility in terms of our ability to move some money from one of these small projects to another. I think the commitment I'd like to make to this, if the council is comfortable with this, is that we put this as a priority within the Community Works list of projects. When the assessment is done, we'll report back to you and let you know what we have determined and how we anticipate funding that. If it turns out that there's a funding need that's greater than what we expect, then that would require reprioritization and a budget amendment. If not, if it's within the range of our Community Works projects, we'd be moving some of those dollars around to accommodate that. I think that gets what you're suggesting,
Absolutely.
Vice Mayor, and if the council is comfortable with that, I'd like to proceed that way.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You done? Anyone else? Okay.
Okay, so just to recap, we're also going to come back in a seminar on the special events, as we talked about a few minutes ago.
Right,
Okay,
thank you.
very good. Thank you, John. So the next operational area that we have to talk about tonight is Public Works. And Public Works is another large and diverse department in terms of the different services that are provided. Our Public Works Department has a total of 239 employees and 76 million, roughly, dollar budget. And this group provides all of the different services that you see in terms of roadway maintenance, drainage system maintenance, all of the facilities maintenance throughout our general fund, all of our police facility maintenance, work on our fire stations, a whole host of different facilities that we have. They maintain all of our fleet operations, which we have a substantial fleet, our police vehicles, our public works vehicles, our parks and rec vehicles. They maintain our storm water system. And as you all know, while we don't have extensive rain, when it rains, we really need the stormwater system to get the water out of here. And they do a good job in maintaining that system. Also, of course, solid waste, one of those services that we provide that touch every resident every week. And our solid waste folks do an outstanding job. We get very few complaints about their excellent work. And our transit system is our paratransit and our Dial-A-Ride program, where we operate a fleet of buses where we move our citizens from place to place who need those services. So that in association with all of the different transportation-related functions and oversight and management that Bill and his office provide. And I should note your accreditation logo there too, Bill.
There it is.
I'm talking about John's, I got to talk about yours. So, an aggressive accreditation program in Public Works as well.
Okay, so with Public Works, obviously, some of the important goals that they're trying to achieve are really, this is a full-service operation. So these are the ones that are out on the streets on a daily basis and really providing those day-to-day services out to our residents, either through their solid waste or transit, or the ones that you don't hear about as much, but are fixing our streets and dealing with a lot of those sort of other items. Their budget approach this year really was to, as we've talked a little bit, as Bill mentioned earlier, in the capital improvement program, as well as in their operating budget, they have funds that help ensure that they're meeting some of the requirements and some of the performance standards they have for repair and maintenance and, in the streets operations and other types of operations. So, that's kind of a key and probably a major cost driver to a lot of their department budget. They also, as well, want to ensure that they have the right amount of training for their staff. Some of these are very technical requirements. Mechanics require some very technical training. Obviously, some of our operators or some of our streets folks, need some technical training. So, there's funding there to do that. And then, of course, with any operations this large, where they're out there doing fixes and managing the day-to-day, public works, public infrastructure of the city, necessary equipment and supplies to do that. A couple of items just to kind of provide some information on. Again, the budget that is before you and some of the requests that they have really focus on those areas of being responsive and then providing good maintenance and repair. One of the items that council brought up at your retreat was that you would like us to look at the bulk trash collection and look at doing that instead of one time a year, doing that 2 times a year. So we are proposing that we would include that as part of this budget. Also look at, in our solid waste services, obviously, the requirement to ensure that we're addressing the growth needs that are in the city. We have both a solid waste equipment operator and a solid waste supervisor planned within the budget for fiscal year 16. So those will address a lot of that growth that we're seeing in those areas. Might have some other notes, but let me check. I think that's it. Any questions?
Council, do you have any questions? Yes.
I apologize. I just wanted to make that one last comment, is that we do believe that with the solid waste additional bulk trash, we will not, in the upcoming year, need to recommend any kind of rate adjustments to the residential solid waste program. There's a lot of variables that go into the solid waste program and costs associated with that. We believe that in the next year, we will be able to accommodate that, and then we'll bring back any adjustments that we may need, on a year-to-year basis, just as we always do.
Thank you, Mayor. Bill, let me, how many of our citizens, what percentage of our citizens actually use the bulk trash collection? Any idea?
Councilor Patana, that number is probably around 25%.
That's pretty low.
Yeah, overall, it is, in terms of the actual set-out rate, it's about 25%.
Okay. I was just wondering if, and I know it was a council request at a retreat to have twice-a-year bulk trash for 25% hardly seems like it would be required. So just a thought.
Yeah, I'm surprised that that number is so low. Do you think if we offered the service more, that the number would increase? Or the same amount of people would just do it half as much? I'm gonna do it twice a year. I mean, I've had a lot of people comment on it, so I'm surprised that it's that low.
Mayor and council, a little hard for me to speculate that, and we do, hear that frequently. They'd like
Yeah.
to see more frequent service. We do offer, in addition to the scheduled collection once a year, what we call a subscription service, where you can call and we'll pick up, to meet your needs at that time. But I don't know that it would be that much greater. I think that those folks that enjoy the program and make use of it and probably would use it twice a year. But there's a lot of communities where that kind of activity is really not welcome in their homeowners associations, and it's just not the kind of thing that they do. So I think it varies across the city in terms of, the utilization and their habits of using it.
Thank you. Councilmember Leone?
Yeah, in this bulk trash, I brought this up before with you, and the first thing you told me that we'd have to raise the rates. So I kind of backed off because I didn't know how much you were going to raise it. But, I've talked to people. People like it. The only problem is a lot of people don't use it. I never use it. My next door neighbor never uses it. A lot of people don't use it. So when it comes to the second bulk trash, will it be that much stuff? And I agree with Michael, because, I had the same thing in mind about the bulk trash, but there are some people that use it, and the only ones that do use it, and I think and probably Mike knows, if you have about 100 trees in your yard, and you cut them every 6 months, that's about the only time, because we had a problem on 94th Avenue with the trees, because they want to charge them $25 extra. I made a research on this with different cities, and I probably like El Mirage don't charge anything, it's in their budget. But there are some cities that charge extra. I think it's maybe Goodyear, who charge like $22 a month. And if you use it, you pay extra. So I don't know how you're going to work it, but it's a good idea. But the only thing is, like you say, and Bill asked the question, 25%. The second one would be what, maybe 15% that would use it?
Well, we'll see.
Bulk trash?
You sometimes don't know, as the mayor suggested, sometimes when you expand a service, you will also expand your customers. So we'll have to see. I think we won't know until we try it for a year and have two. So we'll do it, like every 6 months, and we'll see what it does to demand, right?
But then again, how much you're going to charge? Because a lot of people, you have to think of the people again that can they afford it.
Yeah. Well, we're not proposing a charge for it
Oh,
at this point.
that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah. So
I
it's
can
the
support that.
Yeah. So it's the same program we currently have, which is once a year, getting through the whole community on a schedule. We would just simply do it twice. Correct, Bill? I mean, that's the format you've got going?
Yes, you got it exactly right, Carl.
Right. Yeah.
With no charge.
Correct.
It would be included within the current rate structure.
Right. So everyone that's currently getting solid waste service and paying their utility bills and the solid waste portion of their bill as a solid waste customer will have an opportunity to use that additional service.
Because, I know there's a lot of places, a lot of people that don't use it. Like I say, I don't use it.
Sure.
And my whole subdivision, I don't think, use it. So,
Thank you. Next.
So the second major part of the Public Works Department is the Utilities Division. And this, of course, is the division that plans for, delivers, and operates our water and wastewater treatment facilities. As you know, we have several of both. We treat the water and we treat the wastewater. And there's conveyance, of course, for all of that and wells. And the entire system maintenance is done within the city, and these are the employees and the programs that do that. We also have our Environmental and Water Resources Division, and that is, as the name implies, focusing on our environmental services and water quality.
So just to kind of clarify, what I'd like to do first is talk a little bit about their operations, the utility operations, and then I'd like to, we'll transfer into our next item on the agenda, which is the utility rate discussion. So this really speaks more to the general operations budget and the requests associated with that. Again, very important, very complex system. Water systems require a lot of technology, require a lot of maintenance and repair. So it's important that we are always conscious of what the requirements are associated with that, and that we really preserve and continue the appropriate level of investments into those systems. And of course, as Carl mentioned, we also have a very robust water resource portfolio and program, and those are important for us to kind of preserve our water resources as we go forward and work on our conservation programs and things of that sort. From an approach, the budget really is focused on these areas. It's important that we have, again, in this area, it's important that we have utility operators who are very well trained and really understand what they're doing. We have chemists in the utilities department. I mean, that's, there's some real high-level expertise that we have in order to support these operations. And there's a lot of technology that goes into this as well. And so when you look at your capital improvement program, you'll see things like membrane improvements and things like that that are related to the how we process water and wastewater, but also, you'll see a lot of those normal wear and tear replacement items as well. And of course, this is an area where, as we go forward, we're really needing to address the needs of our future residents in the city. So, we're addressing a lot of that growth that's going to be occurring in the city, and in order to do that, obviously, the costs to produce water and to process the wastewater does cost a little bit more. So, if you can just look on here, there's some items that we're asking to include in here. In our area of wastewater, we're looking to add a couple of what we'll call the sewer cleaner crew. So we've got a couple of positions that are really going to help bring the metrics associated with our sewer cleanouts and ensuring that we're getting through those on a good pace and ensuring that we're meeting what we really should be doing in those areas. And then also having some costs associated with, and I'll talk a little bit later when we talk about utility rates, some of those costs related with the CAP water rate increases that we're anticipating to see through the projections that we've received from CAP. So that's really the overview of that, if there's any questions.
Should we move into the rate
Questions?
discussion?
Well, okay, before we move into
Okay.
rate discussions, I think I'd like to make a comment. First of all, I just want to say that this whole issue is quite complex, and it really is the core services that we provide to our citizens. And they live in cities so that they can turn on the tap and water will flow out, and that they can flush their toilets. And, this is it, the core base services. We do an exceptional job of delivering and planning for these services for our citizens. And I just have to say, everything that we've been doing is enviable in our region, really. I mean, there are other cities that are looking to enhance their water portfolio, and now, when costs are so much more expensive, they are in deep trouble, and they're looking at very large rate increases for their citizens, and I'm sure you've read lots of that in the newspapers these days. Water is like gold, and we have done an exceptional job of planning for it, and being in the middle of this long-term drought that we are living in the middle of the desert. The city of Peoria is well-founded in providing water to our citizens, not only for now, but for the future. So we've done an exceptional job, and we have a really knowledgeable staff that protects our water portfolio as if it were their own. They're just an amazing group of people. And we are very, very fortunate in the city of Peoria to be in the situation that we're in. And we do need to, just like them, protect our water portfolio and protect all the things that we've been doing and make sure that we continue on the same path of doing these same kinds of things. Water's like gold, and we are doing well in Peoria.
Thank you very much for those comments, Mayor Carlett. And with your years of working at Central Arizona Project, you know the water business, so to speak, so we really do appreciate those remarks, and they're absolutely true. Bill Mattingly and Mike Weber and their predecessors and everyone in the utilities area of the city has done a phenomenal job over the years, and we have a great water portfolio, and we manage the water resource extremely well for great value to our residents. And it is something I think we're all proud of, and I appreciate you recognizing that.
Absolutely.
Mayor, if I may, thank you as well for those comments, but it would be remiss if I didn't mention that this council has provided ongoing, good, solid policy guidance in the context of the principles of sound water management, which were adopted by council a number of years ago, and those are the things that we use as our touchstone in the department. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Bill. And that's, I think that we are the only city to have policies like that, that are comprehensive. And we copied, when we put that, we took the format from our principles of sound financial management, which has served the city so well. And we used a similar concept in creating the water policies, and they too have served us real well. So.
We are amazing. Yes, we are.
Well, okay, so that self-congratulatory conversation. So let us move into a little bit on utility rates. And let me talk just a minute before we kind of drill down into the rates. The way we manage our utility funds is through enterprise funds. And in our view, and back to our financial principles, we always manage them in a discrete fashion. And by that I mean we don't use water rate money for any other purpose than our water system. We don't use wastewater rate money for anything else but our wastewater system. And we don't use our solid waste funds for anything except our solid waste system. They're discrete enterprise funds, and we term that fund integrity. You read about other cities or governments that don't follow that same management strategy, and they will use their utility dollars for general fund purposes, for example. We don't do that, and it's one of the reasons that we have been able to manage our financial resources and our water resources as well as we have. We're very careful about that. And so when we look at some modest rate increases, for example, in our water and wastewater program, which we're recommending in this budget, you can be assured that those funds only go toward the necessary and direct expenditures needed to operate the water and wastewater system as designed and as functioning. So these funds are not going to spend to pay for other general fund activities or other city activities. We fund the other city activities that you've been talking about in this budget through other revenue sources, taxes, mostly the sales tax portion of our revenue stream. We don't use the utility funds for that. So I just wanted to say that at the outset because I think it is real important, and it's one of those features of how we manage our finances that's real important. It's easily lost in an era where you do see cities that don't follow that, and that's kind of what we read about in the newspaper from time to time. So that said, we are going to be recommending, or are recommending, I should say, some modest increases in our water and wastewater rates. We're not recommending an increase in our solid waste rates right now, as Katie mentioned a little bit ago. And these modest increases of 2.5% on average going forward for our residential customers cover our costs. And the costs have been managed down very tightly by Bill and his staff. So we're not seeing growth outside of the fact of a few of the ads that Katie mentioned. And Bill has done a good job in making sure that our costs are managed. And he'll speak to that in the context of the budget to any extent that you'd like. But I wanted to mention that kind of going forward into the rate discussion. So with that, Katie, I think it's your turn.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time, as Carl mentioned, going through this, and just to kind of give a broad overview. When we talk about utility rates, we want to talk about a couple of things. One is the kind of planning objectives when we look at our rates over our planning period, but also really get a good understanding of what factors are influencing the need for rate adjustments. So I'd like to go through a couple of those with you. And then, of course, as Carl mentioned, what we're asking for tonight, or not tonight, but for council to ultimately adopt as part of this budget, a 2-year recommended rate adjustment. And as he mentioned, the first year is 2.5%, second year 2.6%. So that's what we're looking at. We do have some other fees and adjustments that we'll touch on that we'd like to talk about, but really it's the utility adjustments. So when we look at utility rates and we develop a rate structure, what we're looking at are a number of things, and these are the important objectives that we keep in mind. As Carl mentioned, recovering costs, ensuring that we have ongoing revenue to support the operational and capital costs associated with our rates, and the set rates really look at that from a little bit longer perspective. And that we also want to ensure that we have strong financial health and stability in both of our enterprise funds, and that we adhere to the city's principles of sound financial management. And as Bill said, it helps when he follows principles of sound water management as well. We want to set the rate structure in a way that promotes equity among the various user classes. Again, there's multiple user classes with utilities. You've got your residential, your multifamily, commercial, landscaping. So there's a number of different user classes. We want to ensure that the rate structure promotes equity among those classes, and encourages water conservation and environmental stewardship as well, of course. That's why we have a tiered structure. So if you are a high water user, you're going to pay a little bit more per 1,000 gallons than if you don't use as much water. And then also, as always, we want to really focus on minimizing the impacts to our customers. So we are very conscious of that, and that's why, as Carl mentioned, we want to take a more thoughtful approach to the adjustments and do it on a more incremental basis. So earlier this year, the city undertook a rate study. We do this every 3 to 5 years, just depending upon what's happening, but to evaluate the city's rate structure and provide recommendations to achieve those objectives that I just talked about. And you can see on here some of the key objectives that we asked our consultant to look at. I'm sorry, okay. Yeah, I will. So we contracted with Reptelis Financial Consultants, and they're recognized as an industry leader in water and wastewater financial and rate planning. And we've been fortunate that we've been working with Reptelis since 1998. So Frank Davis, who's sitting here next to me, he's been our rate consultant since we started working with Reptelis, literally. He's grown up in Peoria. No, not really. But when you hear him talk, you'll know he's not from Peoria. But he's got a very good understanding of our utility systems. He understands our growth patterns, how we've come through, in our high growth times. He also understands those projections because he also worked on our impact fee study as well. So he's got a very deep understanding, which I think is unique to Peoria, to what Peoria is about, what our history is, what our policy and financial requirements are, all of those kinds of things. Frank's kind of, grown up with us in Peoria. And he's really invested in the history of utility rates in Peoria. And so we kind of consider him, just an extension of staff to some degree. But he's here tonight, not so much to present information, but if you have specific questions, he's here to answer some of those questions. So one of the things that I think is really important for all of us to understand is what is influencing the need for rate adjustments. And what does it look like? If we're asking for 2-year rate adjustments, what's really creating that need over the next 2 years? And what we'd like to just kind of bring out are these 3 main areas. The first one is that, as Carl mentioned, Bill has done, and his staff have really worked very hard to be as efficient as they can in their operations. And those of you who have been on council before have seen some of those efficiencies that they've put in place and how they managed through the downturn. But there are, of course, some normal operational increases and costs that are incorporated when we look forward, and those would include your typical things such as salaries and electricity, which is a significant cost driver, chemicals, those types of things, repair and maintenance, as we talked before. Their operating budget has repair and maintenance. Their capital budget has repair and maintenance costs associated with it. And of course, operating costs related to new CIP projects, just as we do with all of our other funds where we have operating costs. If new CIP projects come in play, we have to fund the operating of that. Also, you're aware, I'm sure, of the planned adjustments, as I mentioned, to the cap water rates, and that also create some pressure on the utility operations in the next couple of years. Now, those two aren't the primary drivers. Really, what's the primary driver on our planned adjustments and is the most significant factor, is our capital program. Now, we can talk, you can see on here that this is just in the next couple of years, there are really a number of very important capital projects that need to be completed. And they include what you see up here on the screen in terms of new wells and well rehab. So you've got new wells coming on to serve growth, but you've also got well rehabs that we need to do. And wells provide us our redundant supply of water that we need to ensure that we have. We've got some important improvements at the Butler Water Reclamation Facility in relationships to some of the membranes that we use there, as well as some recharge wells. Bill talked about the importance of some of the repair and maintenance projects and some of the things that we have in there. Line replacements, things that, we have to just continue that to be diligent about that. And of course, the bigger one that we've talked about and that Andy mentioned was the Pyramid Peak Water Treatment Capacity Project. And that is a very big project, and we will be planning to finance that project when it comes due for us to put that project in place. It's going to require that we go out and issue bonds to pay for that because of the high cost of that project. So we've got those borrowing amounts coming up that we need to be aware of. So really rolling all of those factors in, that's where we came up with the recommended 2-year rate adoption of 2.5% and 2.6%. I want to share this. I think this is an important slide, and it's one that kind of puts into perspective what we're doing in Peoria and how we operate. When we look at where we sit relative to other communities in the valley, you can see that we're in the lower end in terms of overall utility bill costs. So what you see on here is your water bill, wastewater bill, and solid waste bill, all kind of stacked up for an average residential user. And if you watch real closely, I'm going to show you what happens when we do the 2.5 and the 2.6 rate adjustments. So don't blink. Ready? Okay? So I think what's important here is to just sort of understand that even with these rate adjustments that we're requesting, we're not really changing our relative position. Our citizens really do enjoy a relatively low burden when it comes to their utility rates overall, and I think that this kind of shows that in where we are in the city. Within the valley. So what does the bill actually look like? I think it's important to see what that's going to mean in real dollars to the average residential customer. You can see here that the current combined water and wastewater bill is $62.79. With the proposed 2.5% increase for fiscal year 16, it would go to $64.33, and the 2.6% in fiscal year 17 would bring it to $65.98. Now, I want to just mention this. So that's $1.54 and $1.65. What I'd like to mention, too, is that because we're not adjusting the solid waste rate, it's actually the overall percentage on a bill is actually a little bit lower. I also want to talk a little bit about rates related to our reclaimed water system. As you know, we have basically 2 reclaimed water systems, one that operates kind of in the southern part of the city out of the Butler Reclamation Facility, and one that operates out of our Jomax facility up north that serves a lot of our Vistancia area where we have reclaimed lines and things like that serving the Vistancia HOA and golf courses. Currently, our rate for reclaimed water is at $1.25. We have done our analysis of looking at the overall cost recovery of that system, not including certain elements of capital, total elements of capital that we need in the future, as we would normally look at. We don't have a robust capital program necessarily for reclaimed lines that's the same as what you see on our normal. But in doing that, our targeted rate is now at $1.40, which is still less than our potable rate, and it is equal to our current non-potable rate. So it's still a very good value to use reclaimed water. What we would propose is that over the next 2 years, similar to what we've done in the past and consistent with that sort of phase-in theory, we would propose that we would phase in to $1.30 next year and $1.35 the following year. And that just kind of helps those people who are on or using reclaim to kind of plan for those increases over time. I did mention earlier that there are a few other recommendations that we have, and I want to just kind of explain these. When you talk about utility rates, you've got that, we spend a lot of time talking about the actual rate adjustment, but there's also some changes into the design of the rate structure that come into play as well. One change that we're looking to do is to adjust our multiplex base charge. So when we talk about our utility rate, the bill that customers pay, there's a portion of that bill that pays for what we call our fixed costs, which would include our meter services area, our customer services, as well as our debt service costs that we have related to bonds that we've issued. So we've got that fixed ratio, and some of you may recall that in the past it was important that we ensured we were sort of behind in that base rate. We weren't collecting maybe the right percentage of the total bill in our base rate. So what we're proposing here is that from a multiplex on those base charges, we're proposing to go from a per meter charge to a per unit charge. And in doing that, we really are more equitably, we're actually fixing an inequity that we have. Currently, the residential customers are paying more than probably their proportionate share in relationship to those base charges. So it's not about the volume, it's about the base. It's all about the base. The other one, and we're proposing to do that both for water and wastewater. The other ones on here are to consolidate our multiplex and hydrant meter charges into one rate. So again, as part of that conversion to going to a per unit charge, we're also looking at going to an average rate for multifamily because they have consistent water use pretty much on there, and they have less of an opportunity, if you think about it, less of an opportunity to really put conservation efforts when you have 20 units on 1 meter. You could be doing your part, but maybe the guy next door isn't, right? So we want to consolidate that into one average tier. We also want to do the same thing on hydrants. We want to do a conservation rate, which means we want to ensure that they're not wasting the water that they're using from the hydrant, because again, that's lost water. That's water that's pretty much not being utilized well, anyway. And then on the wastewater side, again, the multiplex base charge, and then increase the fixed base charge portion of rate revenue, which means what I talked about, increase that percentage that we're recovering on the base. So recover more in the base, and then have the ability to reduce some of the rates associated with the volumetric charges to generate the same amount of revenue, which is what you're basing your rates on, is what is that revenue requirement. And then there are a few other fees that are associated with like our customer service. So when you hook up for a new service, we're trying to recover costs associated with those fees in line with all of our cost recovery policies across the city. So we have a new service setup fee that we'd like to just recover the costs on that, and a hydrant meter deposit where many times developers will need to hook a meter up to a hydrant because they have a requirement for dust mitigation, and they're using it on their sites. We don't want that to be overused. But more importantly, sometimes they mysteriously disappear. So we're looking to ensure that we have the deposit covers the actual cost of that meter if we were to have to go out and replace the meter. And then we actually are recommending a decrease in the utility deposits for some of the city's some of the users that are not on the city system. So, for example, in those areas where there's private water companies, they only receive a solid waste and wastewater bill from us. So because they don't have as much we don't have as much exposure in terms of if they don't pay their bill, we want to reduce the deposit that they have to put down for setting up a new service. So those are really the major changes that we're asking for as part of the rates. And I'm showing you the schedule here because you're not voting on this necessarily tonight. We did have to put out a notice of intent back in April. We'll have a public hearing on these on May 19th, and then the rates would become effective July 1st, assuming council approves them. Questions?
Council, Any questions about any of that? Councilmember Finn?
It is all about the base, just remember that. Just a quick question, you mentioned something about service fees when people call to set up. I didn't see a number on that.
Yes. We are looking to, the new service fee, we're looking to go from $28 for a new service to $50. And that's just to recover the cost of setting up accounts, going out and turning, it's a cost recovery dollar amount.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Patena?
Thank you, Mayor. Bill, I believe that last year you came to this council with another rate increase, and sadly, that was not approved by this council. I think I picked up the frustration in your face when that didn't happen. And my question to you is, will the 2.5 and the 2.6% give you enough to do all the things you need to do in the water department?
Councilor Patena, actually, last year, we didn't come for a rate increase, just I don't mean to disagree with you. The prior year we did, and it wasn't approved. But in any case, the question is it enough? Yes. And it's enough based on the overall program, and that is that you do modest increase over a period of time and not try to do spikes as we may have done in the past.
Any other comments? That was a very comprehensive presentation. Thank you very much. I guess we're ready to move on then.
Okay, very good. Do you want us to move into economic development, or would you like to take a break?
Council, what is your pleasure? Do you want to take a break or you want to move on? Quick break. 10 minutes.